Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Brits To MotoGP podcast. This week we've actually got a couple of guests. We've got Hudson Cooper, we've got Ethan Sparks, Chas Mortimer, and then we'll also be joined by Wilson Dilks as well at the end. We've not quite been able to get all the diaries to line up, so I'll be speaking to Wilson by himself at the end, so you'll be able to hear Wilson at the end. How are you guys going?
Great, yeah, really good.
Yeah, all good.
So you guys have sort of just come back from Valencia, so we'll sort of speak about that properly at the end, but what was your sort of first impressions of the World Finals?
Well, it was my first time there and Hudson's as well, so just riding against the best in the world was different to what I was used to, and a new track which had different surface to any track I've been on. So I was expecting to do quite well, but the whole experience was just brilliant.
That was your first time racing internationally, wasn't it, Hudson?
Yeah, that was my first time, so I was quite excited, to be honest. I was a bit nervous, but I was just going there to enjoy it and hopefully come back next year. And as my mechanic Steve said, this is just a learning year, so
it was almost sort of a enjoy it, bag the experience, learn from it, and hopefully you'll improve from the whole week sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah, and I went in with that mental attitude, and I came out as a completely different rider. So I felt like I gained a lot from the week.
Yeah, no, to be honest, a few people did say they were like really impressed with how well you went. So I think you certainly your stock certainly went up from the week, that's for certain.
That's what it felt like.
Just before we sort of go on to other things, it's probably worth mentioning now there was the announcement on Monday this week about the new team in Junior GP. So Michael Laverty has joined forces with Dorna. Sort of, they were always slightly linked, but now they're a lot more officially linked. It's great news because there's now 2 bikes in European Talent Cup and 2 bikes in Junior GP. So that's the first time Michael Laverty's team's running 2 bikes in Junior GP, and that's a really big step forward. I'm guessing for you, Chas, how big a step forward did you say that is for British sort of bike racing?
Personally, I'm really delighted that Michael's gone down that route because it's the obvious route. I think that we can all see over the last couple of years how much talent we've got in the UK, and it's so important to harness it properly. And I think just going back to Valencia, I thought all 3 boys excelled there. They certainly went better. I mean, I knew Ethan was going to go well. Hudson and Wilson, we weren't sure because they haven't had quite as much experience, but I thought all 3 of them really, really did very, very well indeed.
It's also worth saying Wilson was actually the youngest rider at the World Finals, wasn't he, this year? So he was literally the youngest lad there.
Yeah, he was, yeah. I mean, I think in my opinion, I think Wilson went there a year too early, but, you know, you can't take anything away from them. None of them were defeated by the stress that they were under. I thought it was brilliant. And we've got to remember that these are children, 10, 11, 12 years old. So, yeah, excellent.
I think with like the announcement from Monday, what it now does is for riders like Hudson, Ethan, Wilson, there's now that clear plan, isn't there? You've got Fab Racing, you've got the Ovale, you've then got British Talent Cup, and then there's basically 2 bikes there in European Talent Cup up for grabs, and then there's 2 bikes in Junior GP up for grab. The route of how do you get to a Moto3 ride now is pretty clear, isn't it? There's no sort of, it's quite an obvious way to get there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is actually now the perfect path, to MotoGP. You've got the bottom rung of the ladder is the 160 Ovales, then the 190s, then British Talent Cup, and so on, right the way up to MotoGP. So, yeah, it's brilliant. It's really, really good. It's the first time England's ever had this. What we mustn't forget is even when I was racing, there was Team Blue, which was or Team Azzurro, which was the Italian team. That was 20 year ago. That was a basis of an academy coming from Italy 20 years ago. Then the Spaniards did it 10, 15 years ago, and now at last we're getting on the way. We're sort of building this ladder for British kids to come up to ultimately MotoGP, hopefully.
Yeah, the thing that I think most is it's like built the absolute core structure, hasn't it? And once you've got the core structure, you can then build around that to improve it, can't you? So it's sort of now that's in place, it makes all of the bits on the side a lot easier to put in place, I think.
It does, and it also, as you just said, it gives all the kids from all ages, from 10 to 14, 15, 16, it gives them something to aim for. They know that is the carrot at the end of the whatever path.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I think done a really good job in just 2 years.
Yeah, no, it's. I said I was so pleased when as that news come out, and as I think you often hear comments about Dorna aren't putting much effort into UK riders, and I think this is quite a big statement from Dorna, to be honest. So yeah, no, it's great news. Now, sort of looking backwards, so we'll start with you, Hudson. So you raced in the BMB series this year. So how was your year in BMB?
It was good. So coming from the 110, winning the 110 championship last year, we kind of just entered the 160 just to get an iron on the bike, not even expecting to come in the top 2 or even in the top 3. And just through the year, getting better and better. And towards the end of the couple, like the last 2 rounds, putting in training out in Spain, and I've improved massively on that bike from the start of the year to the end of the year. And yeah, just kind of entered it for a bit of fun, and then we've managed to qualify for the world final, which were a bit of a surprise, really, because I didn't even realise how much I've really come on. But it's just been a really progressive year, and I won the 110 this year and the 160 this year as well. So it's been an amazing year.
Because the 110 you sort of you won the Ovali Cup and then the Ovali Open, then the actual 110 Open, didn't you? So you in Ovali, in the BMB races, you actually race against other brands of bikes, don't you? So in the 110 Open, you were racing against people and like Bookies, etc., weren't you? So that
Yeah.
there's quite a few different bikes to race against, isn't there, in the 110s?
Yeah, racing against Bucci's, racing against some 140 Ovalis. So it was quite a variety, and it was good. In my opinion, better challenge for me. And so yeah, I weren't really that bothered.
No, it's fair. So what's your how did you end the year? What's your total sort of championships by the end of the season?
So I won the 110 Open, I won the 110 Ovale, and then I won the 160 Ovale as well.
Okay, yeah, no, that's and so Ethan, you went a bit of a different route. So where were you racing this year?
So I raced in Austria only because we were provisionally going to do the British one, but then we found out it wasn't going ahead, so we didn't want to take chances like the year before, missing out on going to Valencia. So we went straight to try and go to the Holland one, but that ended up not going ahead. So we had to find another option, and the next easiest option was Austria. So we went to the rollout day in Austria, and I ridden the new track, the Rebel Ring, and on the new Evo 160, which I hadn't ridden before. And yeah, the tracks in Austria were very, very difficult compared to the British tracks, especially Rebel Ring, which there's blind corners everywhere and very, very tight. So I then ended up not doing as good as I thought at the Rebel Ring. I got 1 win, but finished second in the second race. Then the second round, I was at Reknitz, and I did good and not great as well. I had it coming together with Thorley in race 1, and I managed to get back on and score points, which put me 10th. And then race 2, I ended up winning that from 10th, 3rd on the grid. So I've had 2nd or 3rd in the championship coming out of that round. So I knew I had to put everything into it. on for the final round and ended up breaking a lead at Melk and kept that lead onwards until the final round, put me first in the championship.
I was going to say the final round, I think it was in Austria, that has got to be the prettiest kart track I've ever seen. The pictures that you put up and sort of Chas put up, it's sort of in a valley, wasn't it, the last round of the season?
Oh yeah, the scenery was brilliant. There was waterfalls left and right. The track surface was just the best surface you could ever ride on. Honestly, better than some of the Grand Prix tracks in Moto4. Just every part in Austria is just every round it's either really, really hot, but then we went to the Red Bull Ring and it was freezing cold and rainy. So it's just a lovely country.
I was going to say, actually, at the start where you said the next easiest option, I'll just clarify that by easiest you mean travel to get there, not competition. It's the actual logistics of getting your bike to that track. Holland would have been the easiest option, and then Austria was the second easiest, so to speak.
Yeah, travelling wise, because there's good distance. Holland was the closest one next, but Austria was the second closest. But yeah, it was run really well, and they did have someone from the final finish second in the final last year from Austria.
Okay. Also you did Moto4 as well, didn't you? And that you had quite a bit of success in Moto4.
Yeah, definitely. Being my rookie year, we expected me to be top 10, and that happened at Jerez. I think I finished 6th or 7th in the first race and 8th in the second race. But I managed to create a huge step up in Aragon and managed to run at the front in both races and got a podium in the first. But unfortunately, I had a coming together with another rider in the second race, putting me off the bike. And you can't usually get back on in Moto4. Moving on to Valencia, I was pretty confident that I could do well. In the practices, I was around top 5. And then in race 1, I had an off, ended up starting P18 in the second race. And it was P1 in warm-up, so I was pretty confident in the race. And I just worked my way through the field and got into second and started to bridge a gap with P1. And then I just made the last corner overtake and won it on to the line. And then Estoril, again, I was confident that I could win it. But because it's so close, you never know. I was first on the last lap, passed going on the back straight, and then passed, and then was 4th on to the line and got done by 1 place, put me 5th.
No, you got 4th.
Oh, 4th. I was 3rd, and then I got put down to 4th up by the line. And then in the second race, I was 3rd. And that was it. I didn't do any other round apart from Jerez, the last round, where I had it coming together with another rider again, but managed to stay on.
I was going to say, for anyone that's not actually watched Moto4 racing, it can make Moto3 racing look quite tame at times, can't it? So it's very, very draft based, isn't it? So you can bridge quite big gaps, can't you, with the draft? Once there's a couple of you working together, you can really chase down another rider, can't you? It's quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, and you could be leading on the Aragon straight, go down to 5th, and then make 5 places up again, because it's just the straight so long and the slipstream was so strong because the wind was coming towards you.
Yeah, because the Saturday races aren't broadcast on YouTube, so the Sunday races are. But if you watch the races on Saturday on the live timing, you just see sort of riders' names falling up and down the whole time, where sort of, as you just described, the fact that in one section you can sort of, you can just gain and lose quite a lot of places. Back to you quickly, Hudson. You actually, as part of being in the sort of top 2 in the UK series, you were able to go to Silverstone, weren't you, for the Grand Prix? How did you make of that as an experience? Because you was on the main stage, wasn't you, on the Day of Champions, I think is what it's called now?
Yeah. So, yeah, we got invited down to Silverstone with Wilson. and we got given a VIP pass so we can go in all the paddock and meet all the MotoGP riders. So first off, we arrived. We were figuring out where we're going to go. We went and got all the passes and everything. We went straight to the MotoGP paddock, walked around in there, got a few signatures from Bagnaia, Bezzecchi, Marquez. There were nearly every MotoGP rider we got, which were amazing. And then we got called onto the stage and we got interviewed on the stage, and then we came off for about 15 minutes. Then Sam Lowe's came on with us, who's the ambassador for the UK. So he came on, spoke on the stage with us, interviewed us again, and then that was an amazing experience in front of a crowd on the big stage. And yeah, watched the MotoGP. Went into like the big wing, which we've never been in there before for MotoGP, which were really good hospitality all in there. Watched the MotoGP and British Talent Cup as well with her.
How do you find sort of, obviously you're 12 years old or whatever, how do you find it being stood on the main stage at Silverstone? Is that something that you quite enjoy, or does your dad need to give you a bit of encouragement? How do you take that side of it?
No, I quite enjoy it because they treat you like, not like kids, they treat you like young adults, really, which I quite like.
You're just another
Yes.
rider. It's like rider, aren't you, essentially?
Yeah, you're not specialised, you're just a rider. So that's what I quite like about it.
Okay, because so you and Wilson got to do that at Silverstone. Ethan, as part of being in the top two, you got to do the equivalent at Austria, didn't you?
Yeah, we went to the Red Bull Ring, and our ambassador was Philip Salak, so we got to go in his garage and sit on the bike, like the Moto2 bike. And then after that, we went into the Red Bull rookie tent and sat on the bikes, looked around, met everyone. Then
Was you eyeing up your bike for a few years' time?
yeah, and then we went on the stage at the Red Bull Ring with Jack Miller and Brad Binder.
So I was actually wondering that. So all of the on-stage stuff was actually done in English then. So it wasn't as though it was all spoken in Austrian.
No, we didn't actually speak. We got a photo and Jack Miller and Brad Binder spoke in English, but no, we didn't speak.
Would that have been something you'd have enjoyed, or would that have been a bit nerve-wracking for you?
Well, I used to be a bit nervous. So I've done it twice before, but now that I'm not as nervous anymore.
Well, because it's actually worth saying that both you and Hudson this week have done podcasts before this one today, so both of you have been in demand since the World Finals.
Yeah, I did a podcast just after the World Final, and then I got took on another podcast, and then this is my third podcast that I've done in the last 2 weeks, so it has been busy.
You're going to have to start getting an admin assistant.
Yeah.
Or is that Dad's job?
That's Dad's, I reckon. One thing I did forget about Silverstone is that, just like Ethan, we got to sit on Sam Lowe's bike and went into his garage, and all the press were in the garage. We got some good photos in there, and we got to see all the data and everything that they look at. We look through all the garage, look at all the tyre rack warmers, which I found cool, and then look to the Moto2 bikes, which were good.
So I'm guessing on Eurovalis you're able to get data from it. So how many steps above is the data that you was sort of being able to see on Sam's sort of Moto2 bike?
Oh, it's a lot. So on the Ovalis we use our Farnos, and you can see all the G-force and your lines and everything and RPM and stuff. But obviously on the Moto2 bikes it's a lot more precise. They had all weather patterns up and looking at when the rain were going to come, temperature, track surfaces on all different corners. So they had a lot more data than we have in the BMB, but we used a lot more of that at the World Final. So we were comparing lines with Wilson stuff and times and RPMs, and looking and how much speed you can carry through different corners. So I felt like we do have a lot of data, but they're on a whole new level.
Is that obviously now with bike racing, the data's so important? Is that a side of it that you enjoy or find interesting, or how do you view data?
Yeah, I quite enjoy it. My mechanic that came there as well, Harry, who's the ambassador of Ovale UK. He works for Pete Hickman and he works in the team, so he loves all the data. So he's sorting out all the data, and we got it up on the iPad. And like I say, me and Wilson were comparing stuff, and I must have gained half a second and even more just from looking at the data. And I love all that because it's all facts. It's not rubbish. It's factual.
It's proof. You know that you can do that in that corner, sort of thing. I guess.
Yeah.
So, what do you enjoy the data side of it, Ethan, or is that sort of, or do you just prefer riding?
I don't mind the data bit. I love riding, and that's just my favourite part of it. But I remember in the 2022 season, I'd done a wild card for MRE on the Moto4, and that was my first time using data. It was like a line graph comparing how hard we were on the throttle and to the other rider who was in MRE Moto4. Yes, that was my first time using data, and we used a little bit, but in the World Final.
So, with the actual World Finals, then, what was the actual process like of getting there? So, you arrive at Valencia, and then sort of what was the next step once you were sort of in Valencia?
So when you're in Valencia, you went to a briefing which was on the Sunday night. So I think we landed in Valencia on the Sunday morning, and we checked into the hotel.
Sunday morning.
And then we went to the briefing, which is at 5. There's quite a few briefings you actually do on the Sunday and the Monday, as you don't ride on Sunday and Monday. So then on the Monday you do your leather fitting, get your gloves, boots, helmet, everything, merchandise.
You guys as well also had the photo shoots, didn't you? What was it like doing a photo shoot?
Yeah, it was good. You were doing it in all your team gear with the bike. So I had the British flag on, obviously, on my bike, and leathers, helmet. Because I came through the Austrian series, I was one of the first ones to do it. So I obviously didn't know what to expect. But yeah, there was quite a few photos taken, and there was someone doing like media photos and everything, like for their Instagram.
Right. What did you make of the sort of photo shoot element, Hudson? Was that the first time you've done something like that?
No, it's the first time I've been in a proper photo shoot, but we obviously do a lot of media on my channel.
Yeah.
But there's like the media follow you around as you're walking through. As I was walking out, they got a good picture where I'm holding my helmet and all my leathers over my shoulder. So they were constantly scattered around the site. But the photo shooting part were quite good because you come out of the like changing rooms where you just got all your leathers fitted, and then they say, right, you're on now. So, and then you get your photo taken with the bikes. The liveries on the bikes were amazing with a GB flag on the side. Leathers felt incredible. Helmets were really good and gloves were good as well.
I'm guessing that is actually because I'm getting that the whole point of the World Finals is sort of to get young riders used to sort of being at a Grand Prix weekend in many respects. I'm guessing that actual doing the photo shoots type of stuff and all the media, it's actually really good training from that side of the sport, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like it's the whole thing will run like clockwork. It's nothing that I've experienced ever before. You go through and you have to look at your timetable before the day because you don't even know what's going to happen, and then you're constantly going from one place to another, and it's just run like clockwork, which kind of prepares you for the bigger GPs.
So sort of now touching on the actual track side of it, quickly explain, the way they do the World Finals is they split into different groups because obviously there's, I think, was there 38 riders in the 160 class, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
So they split you all off they split all the riders off into groups, and then them groups are used in sort of free practice and qualifying. Your first taste of the track, both of you had never ridden the track before, had you? So you'd only ever seen it on YouTube?
Yeah.
Ethan, what was your first impressions of the track?
Well, from walking around it on the Monday, the surface was very rough. Not bumpy, but it was very grippy, like on your shoes, because it was quite coarse, the surface. I thought it was going to be probably one of the grippiest tracks. But riding it on the Tuesday, I did have 1 or 2 offs on the first session. And we don't know whether it was because the tyres were 2 years old or I just wasn't used to the surface. But it just seemed to slide everywhere. But when we got the new tyres on, I was fine. No slides until the tyres started wearing off.
I think something I've got to just interject there was Avali supplied all the bikes. And as Ethan says, he did have a couple of offs on the first day. And Bernard Aringer, that was working with Christian, our mechanic, discovered that our bike had got tyres that were 2 years old, which had probably been sat in Avali getting cold in the winter and hot in the summer. But as soon as we put the new tyres on, the bike was fine.
Yeah, no, newer tyres generally work as a rule of thumb, don't they, I guess?
Definitely.
Yeah, no, okay, so what is your impressions of the track, Hudson?
Like, when you go to England, the tracks, they normally just go-kart tracks, and they've got all rubbish go-kart cheap rubber on it, so it's not that grippy. And as soon as I walked onto the track, even into the pits, I was like, whoa. And compared to the British tracks, it was like sandpaper. It was so coarse and it was so grippy. It was one of the grippiest tracks I've ever rode on. Obviously, Ethan's rode on tracks in Spain and in Austria and stuff, so he's probably experienced more than me. But from my side of it, from England, it was a massive jump in the track surface, and the track was bumpy. I don't know what you think about that, Ethan, but I found it a bit bumpy. But the surface was amazing, one of the grippiest tracks I've ever rode on. But it kind of tore up your tyres. So after 2 or 3 sessions, your tyres would be kind of shot. So you get new tyres every 2 sessions.
I was going to say, it's actually worth saying what they've tried to do with the sort of track they use for the World Finals is they've tried to replicate the actual Valencia Ricardo Tormo circuit as closely as they can in go-kart form, haven't they? So it's the general layout of the track is very similar to the actual Grand Prix track, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few kinks that are in the big track and not in the small one, but overall the track is nearly identical.
Yeah, it's very, very tight. But so when the free practice results basically dictate what qualifying groups you are. So you went in the first qualifying, Hudson, and you so what did you make of the qualifying? Because that was the first time you were racing against people outside of your initial grouping, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I were quite nervous on the grid. We are like all the brawlers and everything. Then you had your like 3-minute warnings and stuff, so it felt very well run. I was quite nervous starting in 9th and just kind of worked my way through. Got a good start. Took like 2 or 3 people on the start and went from 9th up to 1st, and then I got overtaken by 2nd. And on the last corner, I didn't see the last lap board because it was such hectic racing, and I got just pipped on the line by about a 10th. And he just came up the inside of me on the final corner and got the run to the line. But it was one of the best races I've ever had, and in my opinion, the best race of the week, really.
And I have to say that what Hudson hasn't pointed out is if he got that 2nd place, he would have qualified straight through to the final.
Yeah.
So it was really, really bad luck that he didn't get it.
Yeah.
The thing I thought was really, really bad luck is like next year before the World Finals, I think I'm going to make a flow chart because it confused my little head so much that so I assumed because Hudson finished third in that race, I thought, well, he'll be the top two have qualified into the main final. Hudson will therefore be on pole for the second final. But that wasn't the case, was it? It actually means that you take your original grid slot minus the two that qualified in front of you. So it was almost a double whammy, wasn't it? It wasn't. I just assumed, it's a shame you've missed out there, but you'll be on pole for the next one. You've got a great chance from pole. But yeah, did you start seventh in the second race?
Yeah, that's what we all assumed, and then we seen the grid spots, and we're like, well, I've kind of been done in there. I've come the worst place with. That's what Harry and Steve were saying in the garage. They were like, the worst place you possibly could have come was third because you pushed to try and get second.
Yeah.
You've kind of ruined your tyres, and now you've got to go all again. And then when we find out the news that we're in seventh, that was just kind of another brick on top of the wall. But went again with a positive attitude, and just like I think I came fifth in the second race. And it was a really tough race in the second one. I didn't really think it were going to be that tough because in the first race it was just the top three that kind of made a gap from the main pack. But no, it was like all the top like seven all together. I had a good battle with the American rider. I can't really catch his name. That was for like sixth, and then I just sort of catched up towards the final two laps. Tried to do a few moves to get through to fourth and maybe into third, but just couldn't pip it and came fifth overall. But in my eyes, it's the place where I came overall was much higher than I thought I would when I came here. So that's all I'm really bothered about, and it's just amazing how much I've improved this year.
Because it's fair to say, sort of like where Ethan's raced internationally in the past, you've never raced internationally, so this was a massive step up. And as I said, I think a lot of people are quite intrigued to see how you go because, as I said, you've never raced outside of the BMB paddock, really, have you? So I think you proved to a lot of people that because although that was you missed the main race, it is still 38 of the quickest under 13s in the world. So to miss out by that much, I think proved sort of your level, and I'm guessing that's something that's a real big confidence boost for you going into next year.
Yeah, and the fact that I came like a 10th off qualifying for the final race were guttering, but it drives me even more for next year, and to try and do better next year.
Yeah, no, I said I think you impressed a lot of people. So I'd say next year, if if you go back next year, it's giving you a lot of a learning sort of thing. So I'm guessing the experience is invaluable. So Ethan, you qualified. Well, you in the actual qualifying, you didn't make it straight into qualifying 3, did you? You had to go through qualifying 2.
Yeah.
And your dad messaged me saying that having to go through qualifying 2 lit a bit of a fire under you.
Yeah, definitely, because I was literally 0.01 of getting into Q1 straight away. So I realised that I have nothing to lose now. I just need to push and do everything to get into Q1. So I finished P1 in Q2 by a tenth or so, meaning I went straight through to Q1, Q3, sorry, with worn out tyres. So I just had to do my quick laps straight away, and I put in a lap that got me 7th. And on one of the last 2 laps, I just put in a really quick, a lap that was like 3,000ths quicker than what I'd done. It put me into P3, and then just lost 1 position at the end. But then his lap got cancelled, put me back into P3. So I was really happy with that, and I knew I'm always better in a race. So I thought, right, I'm just going to win this now. But obviously, it was so close. It's just really difficult to overtake. Like, it's so tight. It's one of the hardest tracks to overtake ever.
The actual race format, just because anyone that didn't watch it, the race format is you sort of have a race 1 and a race 2 where it's standard points, and then you have a grand final, don't you, where it's double points?
And that's what I felt, really, because my starts in every race were not great at all. It's because it's so hard to overtake. I was like 7th, and it was just really difficult. I got held up and the front 4 broke away, and I'd done everything to try push to keep up. Got the second quickest lap of the race, but it just wasn't enough. But overall, I ended up P4, so in the world, so I was really happy.
Also worth saying, in race 2, you actually got on. So you were on the podium in race 2, weren't you? So you actually got to be on the podium at the World Finals with the flag, etc. So that must have been quite a cool experience.
Yeah, definitely, because I knew that the Spanish kid wasn't going to sit behind that Malaysian the whole race. So he put me move, which sat them both up and lost them both time. And I just took that opportunity and went straight past them both. And then I pushed and pushed to try to keep P1, but I just wasn't defensive enough to keep it, and ended up P3.
I did notice you was one of the only riders that had discovered the overtake into the tight right-hander, sort of almost a double entry right-hander. You seem to have worked out quite a good overtake going into there, where you kept a really tight line on the inside.
Yeah, it
was 8 or 9, wasn't it? I think.
Turn 8, I think. Yeah, you see a gap, and I just risked it all and went underneath it. And I lined that up a few times, but it doesn't always work. So I just tried everywhere, really.
It's what the guy, the lad that won's a Malaysian lad called Quibil Ifram, and the runner-up was Enzo Zaragoza. So, would you have ridden against Enzo in Moto 4 at all?
No, I've ridden with him in winter training before on the Ovalis, but he rides in the Moto 5 Championship, so I hadn't raced against him before. And I've never seen the Malaysian ride ever. So, no, I hadn't raced against any of them, because I was the only rookie in it. So, well,
I think there was 3 rookies made the grand final, didn't they? I think, from memory.
Yeah, 3 in the final. And 2 of them are from Austria, the Ukrainian Yusevi, and me, and a German kid.
That's actually worth saying. That sort of shows the standard of the Austrian series, because the lad that comes second, Yusevi Kovalov, actually he went well in the finals, didn't he? So he got through to the grand final. So the Austrian series was certainly a decent level, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Because he just picked Levi Flyer, didn't he, from memory, on the last round?
There were 5. The top 5 in the Austrian one were ahead of all the rest of them. And actually, the top 5, well, I think the top 5, none of them were actually Austrian. There was a German, 2 British, an English, a Ukrainian,
Yeah.
and a Dutch.
Yes.
But going back to the final for a second, I just want to make something clear to your listeners, that what we didn't realise is that those Malaysian kids had been pulled out of school by the government. The government had homeschooled them, and for the 6 previous months, they'd been practicing on kart circuits in Malaysia. They then came over to Spain before the event, and the Spanish and the Malaysian kids all practiced at the circuit prior to the event. So really, the Japanese boy was the first boy that finished although he raced there before, as someone that hadn't actually tested in the immediate before the final. So it was, I mean, the Japanese kid and Ethan were probably the most should be congratulated the most, because they'd had the least experience on the track.
The Japanese kid, I apologise if I butcher his name here, but Kotaro Takashi, he actually qualified badly as well, didn't he? Because in the first two races, he had to come through from about, was it 11th or something on the grid, I think?
7th, yeah.
I remember, yeah, no, so, no, it is it just shows the different mentality of sort of governments towards sports. But if you invest in sports, it generally works, doesn't it? And I think you've got to say credit to the Malaysian government, I guess, for doing that, because it works.
It does, and we really desperately need the ACU to help us more with the kids.
Yeah, because in our country we are limited to track time as it is, with weather and noise complaints, unfortunately. So yeah, any help that we can get is needed, isn't it? And I'm guessing that's, as we said earlier, with the new structure of the junior GP team that's been put in place. Hopefully, maybe some of the training can be added around that sort of in years to come.
Yeah, out in Spain, I mean, basically, we just need some financial assistance for the families, because it's very, very expensive for all the families to go out for weekends on end throughout the winter. For the boys to go, or girls as well, because we mustn't forget that there are some very good girls in this sport as well. It's expensive for everyone, so we need this support.
Yeah, no, completely agree. So, sort of, just to sort of wrap up the World Finals. So, basically, I think it's fair to say that you achieved more than you was expecting, Hudson, at the World Finals.
Yeah, a lot more than I was expecting. And it was just an amazing experience overall.
And would you say so? And Ethan, you finished top rookie, P4 overall. By rookie, we mean that obviously this is about the third or fourth World Final. So you was the first rider that had never been to a World Final before previously. So to be top rookie and P4 overall and get on the podium in one of the races, was you happy with that, or was you sort of hoping for a little bit more?
Well, obviously I wanted to win it, but you can't win everything, and I was happy with 4th. I got on the podium, and I did the best I could. So, yeah, I was happy with 4th, but I'll always want better. But sometimes it can't happen. So, yeah, but I was happy with 4th.
And to be fair, because it's such a unique track as well, I think to sort of come away with that was a brilliant result. So I'd say, like I said, Hudson stock rose exactly the same with you. I think your profile and stock within the sport will have gone up massively from that as well.
Yeah, definitely. We gained a lot of followers, I think, on Instagram just after the final.
That's always the modern world's social media followers are important, aren't they? I guess.
Yeah.
So, sort of just looking at next year, we'll go back to you, Hudson. So, what are your plans for 2024?
So recently, I've left the RD racing team, and I've had an amazing year with them. And I've been offered an amazing ride in another team, which involves training in Spain through winter with different riders. Just a lot more training compared to what I was doing last year. With a coach out there as well. This new team's going to benefit me a lot.
Do I get an exclusive or not?
No, sorry.
No, okay, fair enough. You can't blame me for asking. So will you be aiming back? Will your aim be in the 160 sort of O'Varley series in Great Britain again?
Yeah.
Will you be racing anywhere else, or is that sort of to be determined?
To be determined. We don't know. We'll definitely be out in Spain training though. We'll be going in a couple of weeks. Out for training. In Spain. So it'll be a lot of training in Spain and maybe dabbling in a few different championships.
Okay, fair enough. Do you know roughly when you'll be able to announce your plans, or is that sort of still undecided as well?
Undecided. We're still sorting out some of the stuff in the team. So that'll be that'll be announced when everything's sorted.
So worth saying, what's your social media account so everyone can see the news as soon as it drops?
If you just search up on anything, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, search up HKC217, it'll come right up. Drop me a follow, a like, and it all helps.
Perfect. And and what's your plans for next year, Ethan?
So it looks like we're going to do the pre-Moto 3 in the ESBK and the 190s. We don't know whether we're going to do it in Austria or Britain yet. We'll also, we have an NSF 250 that we'll train on over the winter, just so I'll be ready when I move up to the ETC and BTC. I'll know the bikes and know the tracks really. But it looks like none of the rounds clash in the Austrian one if we do that, and the ESBK and the UK. So it looks like we can do both championships every round. So it looks like it'll be a good season next year.
Yeah, no, because you had to miss a couple Moto 4s last year, didn't you? Pre-Moto 3 races in the same paddock as Moto 4, so that's a big improvement, isn't it? I guess from just scheduling. Because where you just mentioned the Honda NSF, I'm right in saying that you're eligible to race in British Talent Cup in 2025?
Yes, I'll be 14 then. So, yeah, I can ride in the British Talent Cup and the ETC at that time, but not the Rebel Rookies because you have to be 15. And next year, I'm just increasing the power on both bikes. So, yeah, it'll be an exciting year.
Okay, that's brilliant. And sort of just to sort of look at with you, Chas, you've actually obviously this is the first full season of sort of the Danny Webb Grand Prix camp, isn't or is it the second season?
It's we did a couple of sessions last year, right at the end of the year in September, October time, I think. But this is the first full year we've done.
So how have you? Because obviously judging from sort of the stuff you've been putting on your Facebook, etc., it looks as though you've actually really enjoyed being involved with these kids in Fab and BMB, etc. Is it fair to say that it's something you've really enjoyed?
Oh yeah, I'm afraid it's a passion of mine. I love it. I just love to see the improvement that they all make. I just love it. With Danny, I mean, it's worked out quite well this year because Danny has done the English team. I've helped Ethan out in Spain and Austria, which is what I want to do next year. It's also my responsibility to try and find money to run the two teams. So for me, it's quite a busy time of year, firing off emails and talking to prospective people. But yeah, it's something I want to continue doing. And I like the way that Michael's made our team like a feeder to his British talent team. I was speaking to him earlier in the week about the young riders that we've been helping. Yeah, it's absolutely great. And I think it's such a shame over the last 10, 15 years that the kids haven't had the possibilities to progress like they currently have.
There's plenty of riders. You look at Charlie Nesbitt, Max Cook. They're the sort of riders that probably came along a few years too early, didn't they? Even Brad Ray, Carl Ride, Taz McKenzie. You can list all of these riders that could have been Grand Prix, right? And I'm not knocking superbikes at all because, you know, I go to all the rounds. I love superbikes, but they're the sort of riders that could have been Grand Prix paddock riders in a different setup, aren't they, basically?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I think particularly Max and Charlie, it was unfortunate. And actually, even to a certain extent, Danny, because I didn't realise that when Danny was racing, he was sent out to Spain to live on his own at 14 years old. And that's a shame, really. No, he needed someone. He's got a lot of talent, Danny. I mean, I've seen him ride, and I think I'm a fairly good judge of what makes who has got the potential to be a top rider. And I think Danny certainly would have made it, but he's enjoying a sort of good finale in the World Endurance Championship at the moment. So he's earning some money there.
Interesting. How did the link up come with you and Danny to set up the Grand Prix camp? How did that actually come about?
Yeah, it was really, really strange. I went up to the last BSB meeting in October 2022, and I didn't know anyone because I hadn't been involved in racing for quite a long time. The only person I knew was Simon Buckmaster, because Simon used to ride for me when I ran the Katayama team in 85 and 86. So I hunted hunted Simon out, and I'd met Archie O'Brien up there and his dad, Sean.
Yep.
And I wanted to take them down to the paddock. So we got down to into the inner paddock, and I hunted out Simon, and it was the time Danny was doing a couple of wild cards, because I can't remember who was riding his bike, but whoever it was had been injured. So Danny was doing a couple of Supersport 600 races on the Triumph. I saw Simon, and he said, "Oh, come in the box." And Danny was there with his now wife, but then it was his girlfriend, Rianne. I got talking to the American boy that was riding for him at that time, and then I got talking to Danny. And Danny said to Archie, "Oh, do you want to look at my data?" And he spent about 15 minutes with him, going through all the data, explaining to him how it all worked. And I thought, bloody hell, I know in my day when I've been racing, I wouldn't have been as involved with a child of what was then 10, 11. And I took his number, and we started to talk after the meeting. And it just went from there, really. I gelled with Danny, although we're many, many years apart. He and I just seem to get on well, and we both have assumed our various roles in the relationship, and it seems to work well for us.
It is absolutely by pure fortune that isn't it strange how a little event can have a knock-on effect, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's the same. We went down to Spain at the start of the year with Charlie and Max, and I didn't know them from Adam.
Yeah,
and obviously the kids obviously associate with someone of their own age, and Charlie and Max were absolutely fantastic with these kids, and it's great to see them interact with them, and the boys and girls they get so much out of it. And I really do think that we've got a really good grounding for the kids now. Danny's school is excellent. We see a lot of really, really good young riders, both boys and girls, because I have to say there have been one or two girls that are really going well. Young Chloe Gleason, she's been riding really well at the end of the year. So yeah, it's all very encouraging.
It's amazing with Chloe how Chloe raced against you a lot, didn't she, Hudson, in the 110s? And it's amazing what being at the sharp end in the 110 races, the confidence that gave her to go back into the Metrokit 50s, and her results suddenly improved so much. And it must just be a confidence thing that it clicked in her head that she can do it almost.
And the thing is, it's riding against faster riders. Now, I think everyone would accept that Hudson came out to Valencia with not very high expectations because he knew he was going against the 38 best children in the world. But he raised his game.
Yeah.
And he only raised his game because there were other kids that were faster than him. And I'm absolutely convinced that children have ability, and some children have natural ability, and some children have to work at it.
Yeah.
It's the same as anything in life. I was very impressed with Hudson, what he achieved at Valencia, and I think he's got a bright future. But he only showed that because he was riding against riders that were considerably faster, and he didn't want to get disgraced, and he did very, very well.
Yeah, you could see the countries that had got to a certain level, and then until another rider comes through in the country and goes faster than the other riders, then nobody gets faster, really. And I know the level slowly goes up every year, but all the countries' level goes up every year. The fastest the country is only as fast as the fastest rider. So
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, yeah. And as you know, it's not just, you don't just have to ride fast. You have to be intelligent. You have to be able to read data. You have to work hard at school. There's so many facets to racing. It's people that don't know and don't understand it are quite surprised when you say to them. And it's like PR. It's so important that you don't do anything wrong at the circuit, you know. And I thought all three boys at that meeting excelled. Really, really good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wilson, obviously, we're not spoke about Wilson. Wilson will be on with me in a couple of days' time, so he will be in on this podcast, but obviously not in on this conversation. But Wilson did really well, didn't he? He, as I said, he was the youngest rider there, and again, it's the first time he's raced internationally, and he stepped his game up again, didn't he? So it's really promising to see that the old phrase "sink or swim," isn't it? Almost, and thankfully,
right. I mean, Wilson at Danny's school, riding with Ethan, both on the Avalis, and it's been interesting to see, because Ethan clearly has been faster than Wilson. It's been interesting to see Wilson trying to adapt his style to the way that Ethan's developed his.
I think when I was speaking to someone on one of my podcasts previously, the name escapes me as to who the rider was. I think it was actually talking about Johnny Garness, but someone said when Johnny started racing in the European Talent Cup, he come back to the British round, and the way he was braking into corners and using the brakes, I think, on the exits of bends almost, had changed so much. So he had learnt that out in European Talent Cup, and then our riders then seeing him doing it, and then now they're able to then start copying what he's doing. So it's all about just learning. Once you get someone with a certain standard, everyone can build from that, can't they?
Yeah, they can. Now look, if you looked at Johnny at Silverstone last year, first round of the BTC, he was going very well. I think he won from memory, but he made lots of mistakes. He was running on into corners. I then saw him at Brands Hatch in about June. It was a hot meeting, a BTC round, and he actually absolutely demolished the opposition. Completely different rider. Been riding out in Europe against good riders. It is absolutely the way to go. You can't. Johnny wouldn't have improved the way that he did do if he hadn't been out to Europe last year.
Yeah. I said I can't think who it was, but one of the other riders said that he come back from one of the rounds and it was like a different rider basically. But so sort of we're going to start to wrap up this element of it, so to speak. So add on. So Wilson will be on the podcast shortly. But how do we follow you on social media, Ethan?
So you can find me on Instagram, which is Ethan Sparky 62. Facebook, which is Sparky 62, and yeah, that's it really.
You have Twitter as well, don't you? I think.
Sorry, what was that?
You have Twitter as well, don't you?
Twitter, I think. Yeah. I don't run the Twitter account, but
that was my only criticism of you last week, actually, Ethan, was the music choices on some of your Instagram reels.
Blame me for that.
Pardon?
My mum probably one, yeah.
I was remastering some of them with Oasis instead, and it was a lot more easy on the ears. But no, thank you very much, Hudson, Ethan, and Chas, for coming on, and hopefully we'll get you on again at some point next year. Just sort of randomly on the pods. Basically, through my own work commitments, the summer's very busy, so I've decided that I'll almost have my podcast season will be in the off season. So during the actual racing season, I won't do that many podcasts. But during the winter, I intend to start doing them sort of every fortnight, so to speak. So we can expect a few more podcasts coming up during the winter months. And I think it's just a lot easier because everyone's got a bit more time on their hands, haven't they, in the winter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've got to thank you for all you do as Brits to MotoGP for the kids of this country, because you're raising their profiles so much, and it's great to see. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. To be honest, I set it up with the expectation of sort of getting 70 followers on Twitter and closing it down because it didn't go anywhere. And I always had a suspicion that people would be interested if they knew it was there. And because no one knew it was there, no one was interested almost. So I thought I've taken the whole thing almost as fishing and just throwing bait out and seeing what bites. And to be honest, it surprised me how much interest there has been in sort of a lot of the stuff I've done, and that's obviously really good because the more views that these people like Hudson, Wilson, Ethan, etc., the more people that know about them, the more chance there is of sponsorships, etc. So yeah, no, I'm really pleased that it's working, and sort of semi-surprised, to be honest, how well it is going.
Well, it's great to have your social media input.
No, thank you. So this ends the first part of the podcast, and I'll be back on shortly with Wilson. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you for having
No
us
problem.
Yeah, thank you.
So now we're at the second part of today's podcast. We're joined by the other British rider that went to the World Finals, Wilson Dilks. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
So you, how was it at the World Finals? Is that your aim at the start of the season, or was that a pleasant surprise?
It was a bit of a pleasant surprise because we didn't know if I was going to go, if it was going ahead at the start or not. So
we just sort of before we get on to World Finals, how did you get into bike racing? Sort of is it a family thing or is it something you discovered yourself?
it's a bit of a family tradition.
So does your dad ride or anything like that?
My dad and my dad's dad.
Okay. So you, when did you first start racing?
So our first time on a motorcycle, I was 2, and my first race was when I was 6.
Right. Okay. Was that with Fab or BMB?
Fab.
Okay. Is that so? Because your little brother races as well, doesn't he? So is he on your old bike?
No, because now my old bike wouldn't be in the regulations.
Okay. It's do you help your little brother a lot, or does he like doing it all himself?
Probably all himself, but I will try help sometimes.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So how did you get on this year? Because you raced in both the Fab and the BMB paddock. So how did you get on in the Fab paddock first?
The Fab 50cc, I got
Yeah.
3rd in the championship, and the 70, I think it was 5th.
Was that sort of what you expected, or was that better? What was your expectation?
In the 70s, we expected around top 5. In the 50s, we thought I was going to be like top 10.
Oh, okay. So you did better than you was expecting then.
And it was the first time I've rode a 50. So
Because you joined Danny Webb, didn't you, at the start of the season? So what's it been like racing with Danny?
he's helped me a lot with like body position, lines, and a lot more stuff.
Was that how did that come about? Did Danny and Chas contact your parents, or sort of was there a connection beforehand?
They contacted my parents.
That must have been a real nice confidence boost then. Someone like Danny sort of picking you out.
Yeah.
So in the BMB, how did your season go with BMB?
So I got 2nd in the championships, and I missed like half the rounds, and I won most of the races I did. So
I think next year, because you had to miss a few, didn't you? Because Fab and BMB clashed. Whereas I think next year there's no clashes, is there? So it'll give a lot of riders a better chance to race in both, won't it?
Yeah, and also I broke my wrist halfway through the season as well.
Was that in a crash or was that non-racing related?
It was in a crash.
Where was that?
Red Lodge.
Was that with Fab or was that with the BMB paddock?
It was with Fab.
Okay. Did you have to miss a few rounds with that, or was you able to sort of race with it?
I was sort of able to race with it, and the crash was on someone's oil.
Oh, was that Luke Fitchett? Did
Yeah.
Luke Fitchett's bike? Yeah. Okay. Not much you can do about oil, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so when with part of the being second, you actually got to go to the Grand Prix, didn't you, as a guest of Dorna? So how was that as an experience?
It was amazing. I got to see half of the MotoGP riders, plus I went into Sam Lowe's garage.
What was it like with Sam? Was he really helpful for you?
Yeah.
So what was that? Because you also was on the big stage, wasn't you, with Hudson? Was that nerve-wracking or not?
Yeah, it was very.
Is that? I'm guessing that's something that it's a bit outside your comfort zone, is it, at the moment?
Yeah.
But what? So did you actually have to speak on the stage, or was you sort of just there with Michael and Hudson?
Speaking.
I'm guessing you hope next year you'll be back there again, won't you? Because I imagine that'll be part of the prize again, won't it?
Yeah.
So at the World Finals, then, how did you find it? Was it bigger than you was expecting?
Yeah.
Because you was actually the youngest lad there, wasn't you? So you was the youngest rider of everyone there.
Yeah.
So did you? What did you make of actually the racing? How much higher sort of was it than you're used to, so to speak?
If I'm allowed to interject,
Yeah.
the racetrack is really quite tight and twisty, so there aren't many overtaking places. Whereas on the UK tracks, there's more opportunity and there's a lot more gradient and things. So it's the first time he's ever ridden on a completely flat track.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we would have to practice because you haven't got the undulations of a circuit to help you.
Yep. It is literally, it looks, from watching it on YouTube, it's snooker table flat, isn't it?
Totally is, yeah. And so you've either got to be willing to put in a really hard move or you don't make the move. And Wilson's always been a very courteous rider. Their level of aggression is different to maybe what we would see in the UK.
Yep. So what with the racing, Wilson? So whereabouts did you finish? So whereabouts did you qualify?
So out of the whole thing, I think I was 20th.
That's bearing in mind that's sort of 38 of the best riders in the world at your age group or under 14s. You must have been quite pleased with that, wasn't you?
Yeah, I was very.
And then in the races, so your mum just said about how hard the racing was. What did you make of it being a bit more rough and tumble?
So at first it was a bit
Was it a bit of a culture shock almost?
yeah, and then towards the end I kind of got a bit used to it. And in the last race I got third.
And you also got the fastest lap, didn't you, in the final race?
Yeah.
So obviously, so was that how you was hoping it would go, or was it sort of slightly? What was your overall feedback on the weekend? Was you pleased?
I was very pleased and a bit surprised that I did that well.
Because as I said, because you're the youngest rider there, it actually means with your age, you've potentially got 4 more years, haven't you, of going to the World Finals?
Yeah.
So that long term will give you quite a big advantage, won't it? Hopefully.
Yeah.
So what are your plans for next season, Wilson?
We're gonna try do the 50s, 70s, and the 160s.
Okay. So you'll have busy parents then.
Yeah, and try practice on the 190.
Because you're too young to race the 190 yet, aren't you? I think.
Yeah, at the World Final. Yes.
So you'll try and get a bit of practice in for when you are eligible.
Yeah.
So sort of in MotoGP then, who would be your favourite rider?
Current now, probably Marc Marquez and Jorge Martin, but all time probably Rossi.
So is that who you got? Like, how is that sort of the rider that got you into racing then?
It was my dad who got me into it.
Right. Okay. But so looking at next year, then, do you think Marquez will be able to win the championship?
He's got a better chance than last year now.
Right. Well, I think if he stays fit, a lot of the other riders will be panicking. So if anyone wants to follow you, you're on Instagram, aren't you? And your account Wilson Dilks SPSR85.
It's Wilson Dilks PSR 85.
I'm guessing your parents keep that very up to date with all of your racing endeavours then.
We try, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you for coming on. And as I said, that's sort of the end of this episode. So it's been done in 2 parts. So thank you for everyone that's come on, and we'll be recording another episode shortly. Thanks for coming on, Wilson.
Thank you.